So then yeah, it's been a long time. Now then I wanted to ask, first of all, how many people are, I know many people are following every detail of what's going on in the resistance. The group was there last night. There are people that didn't really know anything, so I just wanted to check just to be sure. Some of you have not been following much about what's been going on within the Society of St. Pius X in Rome and that sort of thing. Some are not following, or they are following. There's some that aren't. Some of you are not following very much what's happening, or a modicum. Okay, because just lay out the essential problem. Trying to be. Let's drop this here. The essential problem is the change of faith. Sometimes I'll do just a brief catechism on the crisis that's presently in the Society of St. Pius X. It is a worldwide crisis that has reached its zenith, or reached its perfection, reached its, they say the death point, or the explosion point, in 2012. And we can put a day of death, so to speak, a day of the official change of the Society of St. Pius X to a new doctrine and to a new theology. That day was July the 14th, 2012. Officially April 15th, 2012, but it wasn't known to the world, it wasn't publicized, and it wasn't given to us as an official document of the Society of St. Pius X until July the 14th, 2012, at the end of the general chapter of last year. So we reached a point on that day in which the Society of St. Pius X officially promotes a new doctrine, different than the doctrine that it has promoted since its foundation in 1970. And this new doctrine is that there are no more two churches, Conciliar Church and Catholic Church. That's removed in the July 14th Declaration. That Vatican II no longer has error in it. There's no error in the Council. And that's made clear in the July 14th Declaration in the middle paragraph, where it says Vatican II remains tainted with error, which means it has the taint of error, or like the stain of error, the stain of original sin we have after we're baptized. But original sin is gone. Original sin is wiped away. But then the taint remains. So we have this official statement: the taint of error is in the Council, but there's no error in the Council. We also have a new source of unity in the Society of St. Pius X, which is enunciated in the first paragraph. We are united behind the Superior General. We used to be united in the faith. Now we're united in the Superior General. It is now the authority, the person of the authority, that is the source of the unity. That's a very essential shift. We'd say in modern speak, it's a paradigm shift. A shift that is a complete another direction than the direction that we had before. When you have a paradigm shift, this is a shift by which you leave whatever you were doing before and you go into a totally new universe, a totally new direction. And that paradigm shift is complete July the 14th, 2012. Each of the essential elements are there. We're no longer united in the faith, which is the first paragraph. We are now united behind the authority of the Superior General and the person of the Superior General. Then we speak about the Catholic Church being the true church. We speak about there being errors and difficulties. But then we say that Vatican II remains tainted with errors, which means there's no error in the Council. Then it says that the Church, the magisterium of the Church, is still promoting the Catholic faith. That the subjective magisterium, that is Pope Benedict XVI last year, and now Pope Francis, that the popes are promoting the minimums of the faith, even if they have problems. This is the new doctrine. And then, of course, we're united in prayer and all this kind of thing. So that those are the essential shifts, completely other. Then, of course, added to it are the conditions. We now say that we have determined and approved conditions under which we will obey the modernist bishops. And these are 6 conditions. The first is the condition of ecumenism, the condition of religious liberty. That is, we want the right, we will accept to be under the modernist bishops if they allow us the freedom to express our Catholic true opinion and to criticize those persons responsible for the novelties or errors or novelties of religious liberty, ecumenism, and Vatican II, which means that the religious liberty and ecumenism errors, Vatican II, novelty, no error in Vatican II. And we are asking for the freedom to express our opinions. No Catholic has the right to ask for that. That is a sin. It's a mortal sin. You cannot ask for the right to express the truth. You have an obligation to express it. You have a duty to express it. You have an obligation and duty to express and profess your faith unto martyrdom. That's the obligation of every Catholic. Unto martyrdom, we are obliged to profess and express our faith. Condition number 1 says, of these 6 conditions, we want the right to have the religious liberty to express the truth, just like others have the religious liberty to express error. That's the most evil of all the 6 conditions. And then, of course, there's a third one, the one that made the newspaper, so to speak, that scandalized many traditional Catholics last year, which is the second of the wishable conditions, and that is the willingness, or the first of the wishable conditions, that willingness to be under the modernist bishops. So we're willing to be under the modernist bishops without their conversion, knowing that they are going to use their authority in order to destroy the faith. We're going to obey them, which means we are guilty by complicity. We make ourselves guilty in the destruction of the church by complicity. Now, these are all the conclusions. Each one of these things is wicked, and each one of these things by itself is a sufficient reason to condemn and expel all of the superiors involved in any one of those wicked things, whether it be saying our unity is behind the superior general instead of being in the faith, or whether it be saying there are not 2 churches but only one church, in which there is that the new church is part of the one true church. It is not part of the one true church. That the poison of Vatican II is part of the truth, and that we have to understand the poison of Vatican II in the light of the truth, and the truth in the light of the poison of Vatican II. Now, this was said in the July 14th declaration, and we find that, myself, many other priests, Father Glez told Father Chazelle last year, at least 50 priests wrote letters to Menzingen showing their worry and concern about the new theology and new direction of the society last year. There were no responses. There was no answer from Menzingen to any of these priests. And so this change completed itself in 2012. We're now a year past all this. A year has gone by, and during the course of this year, we see that there is a continuation of the implementation of the new policies, of the new theology. We find a repetition of the new theology. We find explanations of the new theology. We find defense of the new theology. We do not find retraction. We do not find repentance. We do not find a going back to the old direction of the Society of St. Pius X. Just as we study the death of a body, when a man is dead, the exact moment of death sometimes is hard to tell. He stopped breathing, his body isn't moving anymore, his heart stopped beating, and we think he's dead. But the only infallible sign of the death is the putrefaction that continues afterwards. So that now we know the person is dead, but we let the body lay for a little while to see if putrefaction occurs. If putrefaction doesn't occur, then this means that maybe the person was not dead. So if the person is truly dead, what will be seen is putrefaction. If the person is not truly dead, then you will see a recovery. Now we claim, by the evidence of the General Council of last year and the doctrine contained therein, that the Society of St. Pius X was theologically dead as of July 14, 2012. Why? Because of the reasons just enunciated. That there is a new theology about the council, which is 95% okay, in fact 100% okay, because it can be seen correctly in the light of tradition. and all the reasons we just enunciated. Now, if that is true, what will be seen is between July 14th, 2012 and July 14th, 2013, or until today, August 2013, we will see signs of putrefaction. We will see that those errors that were promoted and that new theology that was declared officially in July of 2012 in a public manner, we will see that theology repeated. We will see that theology spread. And if we see this, that is a proof that the death really happened. And that it was not simply an aberration or a weakness or a small turn of events by a few wicked men, but an actual death has occurred. And we see that the death has occurred. The biggest proof is the April 15th, 2012 declaration, which, did any of you, have all of you read this April 15th, 2012? If you've read it, you all read April 15th. The April 15th, 2012 declaration was sent by Bishop Fillet to the Pope. And this declaration has in it, this is the June 27th one, this declaration has in it several points, but just simply that are heretical, that are gravely erroneous and heretical. And one of them is that the new Mass is legitimately promulgated. So it says the new Mass legitimately promulgated. It also says that Vatican II enlightens and deepens and makes more explicit the teachings of the Church. We have this declaration, the doctrinal preamble, a doctrinal declaration sent by Bishop Fillet to Rome last year on April the 15th. It was reprinted in the Cor Unum, which is the official bulletin of the Society, in March of 2013, this year. And it was reprinted as an official document sent by the bishop to Rome, and also with an explanatory note in which the errors contained are backed up and defended by Bishop Fillet. So it says here that the entire tradition of the Catholic Church must be the point number 4, the entire tradition of the Catholic faith must be the criterion and guide in understanding the teaching of the Second Vatican Council, which in turn enlightens, in other words, deepens, and subsequently makes explicit certain aspects of the life and doctrine of the Church implicitly present within itself or not yet conceptually formulated. So Pope Bishop Fillet teaches in the name of the Society of St. Pius X, signed by Bishop Fillet, sent by Bishop Fillet to Rome as our official teaching, that we, followers of the SSPX and members of the SSPX, believe that the Second Vatican Council deepens, enlightens, deepens, and makes explicit certain aspects of the life and doctrine of the Church. So that Vatican II makes explicit, enlightens, and deepens the doctrine of the Church. That is a lie. That is baloney. But this is not just Bishop Fillet giving a talk to some news reporters. This is an official declaration of what we teach, of what we believe. Once this declaration has become known in public, it is a moral obligation of any Catholic, particularly those who are priests of the Society of St. Pius X, it is a moral obligation sub grave to condemn this lie, which means under pain of mortal sin. Because we are Catholic priests, and as a Catholic priest, trained in the Catholic faith, if I hear that my superior and the representatives of the society to which I belong teaches, as the teaching of the Society of St. Pius X, that Vatican II enlightens, deepens, and makes explicit the doctrine of the Church, which was implicitly present in itself or not yet conceptually formulated, that is heretical, erroneous crap. And those who teach it must be condemned. And since it is known that it is taught and put in writing and sent to Rome and repeated in 3 separate official documents. First, the document itself that was sent to Rome on April 15, 2012. Secondly, the reprinting of this document, putting it into the Corunum of the Society of St. Pius X in March of 2013, which is the official bulletin of the Society of St. Pius X containing our official acts. And every priest and member of the Society of St. Pius X received in his hands this declaration reprinted in the Corunum as the official teaching of the Society. And then thirdly, in that same Corunum, an explanatory note written by Bishop Fillet, which was an official explanatory note in which the bishop says that he accepted, that particularly point number 7, that the Vatican II Liberty, the new Mass, is legitimately promulgated. Which means it is a good Mass, legitimately promulgated. That is a lie. It was a bastard Mass. That is what Archbishop Lefebvre called it, a bastard Mass. If you look up the word bastard in the dictionary, you'll discover that it means illegitimate. So when you say that it is a bastard Mass, it means it's an illegitimate Mass. Now we have Bishop Fillet saying it is a legitimate Mass. This is an other teaching than Archbishop Lefebvre. Now either Archbishop Lefebvre was correct, in which case Bishop Fillet is wrong, and therefore he must be condemned, or Bishop Fillet is correct, in which case Archbishop Lefebvre was wrong, and he must be condemned. But we cannot claim that they are together. They are two opposite teachings concerning the sacred liturgy, or the demonic liturgy of the new Mass, which is essential. This liturgy is the expression of a new theology. It is the expression of a new church, of a Protestant church, of an anti-Catholic modernist church, which has led and is still leading millions and millions of souls to hell. This doctrine matters. Now it is reprinted, put into the Corunum in March of 2013. And it is said that it's okay by Bishop Fillet. We find also that the Living Magisterium, is accepted. The idea of living tradition. Tradition is the living transmission of revelation, usque ad nos, and the church in its doctrine, in its life, and its liturgy perpetuates and transmits to all generations. That is to say, what she believes. Tradition progresses in the church with the assistance of the Holy Ghost, not as a contrary novelty, but through a better understanding of the deposit of the faith. And this entire tradition must be the criterion and guide and understanding of the Second Vatican Council, which in turn enlightens and deepens, so that we must understand the tradition of the church in the light of Vatican II, and Vatican II in the light of the tradition of the church, in such a way that the tradition of the church doesn't contradict Vatican II, and Vatican II doesn't contradict the tradition of the church. And that is the teaching. That is the teaching of the hermeneutic of continuity, is what Bishop Pope XVI calls it. But it's a new teaching which is contrary to the teaching of the Catholic faith. It's a heretical understanding of tradition. Tradition is the handing down of an unchanging deposit of the faith. I have handed down what I have received. Add nothing, subtract nothing from the doctrines that you have received. All Catholics know that. And yet now we say that this handed down doctrine can change. It can progress in such a way that the new teaching is not really contradictory to the old, even if it's the opposite of the old. And the old teaching must be understood in the light of the new, so that we will re-understand the old teaching. The old teaching was that religious liberty is a heresy. The new teaching is religious liberty is a good thing. And therefore we will understand heresy in the light of the good thing. This is exceedingly grave, dealing with doctrine. And then, of course, the new principle of the hierarchy of authority over faith. This hierarchy of authority over faith is contained in the July 14th Declaration, where it says, the truth is, of course, faith is over hierarchy. But in the July 14th Declaration of last year, it says that at the conclusion of the general chapter of the Society of St. Pius X, gathered together at the tomb of its venerated founder, Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, and united with its superior general, the participants, bishops, superiors, and most senior members of society elevate to heaven their heartfelt thanksgiving, grateful for 42 years of marvelous divine protection of our work, amidst a church in crisis and a world which distances itself farther from God and His law with each passing day. So we have a new principle. We're united with our superior general instead of in the faith. Now that was a statement in the general chapter. Now we find 1 year later If we see the signs of death, if that was an aberration, we should see opposite statements in the new teachings. But no, we find a confirmation. Each of the errors that was promoted last year finds its confirmation in new documents and new declarations. Point number 8 of the new declaration of June 27th. They read this from the pulpit here, right? I think they read it in almost every parish, right? So this is June 27th, the June 27th declaration of 2013. So almost a year after the July 14th declaration. And we will see a confirmation and an explicitation of the same doctrine that was there on July 14th in this document. Point number 8 by Bishop Tissier, Bishop Fillet, and Bishop de Galaretta. The June 27th declaration. The weakening of the faith, point number 8. The weakening of the faith in our Lord's divinity favors a dissolution of the unity of authority in the church by introducing a collegial, egalitarian, and democratic spirit, coelum and gentium. Christ is no longer the head from which everything flows, in particular the exercise of authority. The sovereign pontiff who no longer exercises effectively in the fullness of his authority, and the bishops who, contrary to the teaching of Vatican I, esteem that they can collegially and habitually share the fullness of the supreme power, commit themselves thereby with priests to listen to and to follow the people of God, the new sovereign. This represents the destruction of authority, and in consequence to this destruction of authority, the ruin of Christian institutions, families, seminaries, and religious institutes. What does point number 8 say? Faith is exceedingly unimportant. The only purpose of faith is to defend authority. Having been a priest in India, incredible India, we learn about the Hindu priests. And it's true of all pagan religions. A Hindu priest, like some men were telling me, is basically a storyteller. And a Hindu priest tells you the stories of the gods, of Shiva and Ganpati and everybody else. He tells you the stories of the gods. And each of these stories has a common theme. And the theme is the gods say you have to listen to the priests. And the gods say the priest can never commit a sin. For instance, a priest in Hindu religion cannot commit adultery. He can only bless marriages. So that if there is a case of a Hindu priest who is with a woman that is married, that's blessing the marriage. But if there is another man with a woman, that's adultery. He can be stoned to death. It's terrible. It's a horrible thing. So, nonetheless, the priest cannot sin. The priest cannot be disobeyed. The priest's authority is divine and sacred, and the priest tells story after story after story in order to emphasize to the children from the earliest age to the latest age that they must obey the priest and the priest and the priest and the priest. That's the nature of all pagan religions. The Catholic religion, previous to this June 27th document, was different. In the Catholic religion, if the priest does not obey God, he burns in hell. The priest has more obligations than the faithful. For instance, he has a greater vow of obedience, he has a greater vow of chastity, he has a greater vow of poverty, he has a greater obligation to all those things, even if he doesn't take those vows. He has a greater obligation to each of those things. He has a greater obligation to practice each of the virtues. He has a greater obligation to go to confession. He has a greater obligation to do everything that a Catholic is obliged to do. The priest is obliged more so to do these things. The priest has less privileges, actually, than the faithful in the Catholic Church. But not now. Now, what does this June 27th document say according to our three bishops? What is the tragedy? And listen to this carefully. The weakening of the faith in our Lord's divinity. It's a terrible thing to not believe in Christ's divinity. Why? Because if you don't believe in Christ's divinity, you won't listen to the alter Christus. The priest is another Christ. So if you don't believe in Christ's divinity, you won't listen to the authority in the church. Authority is mentioned about 20 times in this paragraph. Authority, power, fullness of authority. Collegiality is terrible. That's equality. Equality is a terrible thing. And then also, esteem that they can collegiate and habitually share to the fullness of supreme power. They commit themselves thereby with priests to listen to and follow the people of God, the new sovereign. You know, there are times in which a superior must follow the inferior. One great example is St. Catherine of Siena. St. Catherine of Siena, I don't think she was ever able to read. Was she able to read? I don't think so. But nonetheless, she was child number 23 of her family, and she was weird. Even by all standards, she was weird. She lived in her house, she lived in her bedroom, she never went outside, she fasted all the time. She was a strange girl. And St. Catherine of Siena yelled at the Pope, threatened the Pope, and gave orders to the Pope. Now, imagine she did that to Bishop Fillet. Wait a minute, I am the superior. You are a little girl. Many, many times, God has used the inferior to correct the superior. Remember Balaam's ass? Balaam was mad at his little donkey because the donkey wouldn't go. Then the donkey finally turned around and said, "Are you stupid or what?" The donkey spoke. And he said, "What do you mean? Why aren't you going?" He says, "Look at that angel there. He's going to kill you." And what did the Balaam say? "Nice donkey. I am glad you didn't obey me." The donkey had to tell Balaam, and the donkey had to disobey Balaam, and the donkey had to tell Balaam, "This is why I'm not doing what you want." There are many times in which the superior must listen to the inferior. There are many times. It has happened so many times in the lives of the saints, so many times in the lives of the church. It has happened in the lives of kings. It happens all the time. It is something that has to be many times. But according to the number 8 here, the greatest evil is to follow the people, the new sovereign. Well, there is an evil in that if you follow them as a sovereign. But many times you have to listen to the people. And there's a backwards way of speaking. And this is also false. That destruction of authority ruins Christian institutions, families, seminaries, religious institutes. It is not the destruction of authority that ruins these things. It is the loss of faith. It's a loss of faith. So you will see, we won't go through everything, and each of the teachings of the New Declaration and the sermons, SSPX.org, DT.org, they continue to back up the modernist teaching of 2012. One other point here in this declaration. This declaration of June 27th is the most liberal and worst of all the declarations that have come out from Menzingen so far, theologically speaking. It's the worst one. Point number 7 says, for instance, of this new declaration, the clergy and faithful, many clergy and faithful no longer see in our Lord and the Catholic Church the unique way of salvation. They have renounced to convert the adepts of false religions, leaving them rather to the ignorance of the unique truth. This ecumenism has thus literally killed the missionary spirit through seeking a false unity and so on. This ecumenism, what ecumenism? The ecumenism that says the Catholic Church is not the unique way of salvation, and the ecumenism that doesn't want to convert the adepts of false religions to the Catholic faith. This ecumenism killed the missionary spirit. That is a lie. This ecumenism is a heresy, which if you believe, you are damned. Your soul is damned. This ecumenism is most grave. It is a heresy. It leads millions of souls to hell. It doesn't kill the missionary spirit. Whenever you say that you killed the spirit, it means that you still have the faith. It means that you're still in the right army. You just have the wrong spirit. You're too cruel or too negative or whatever it might be. But this case of ecumenism, when you believe in the heresy of ecumenism, you are a member, you have denied the Catholic faith, you are a heretic, you are living in the state of mortal sin, you are an enemy of God. And yet the 3 bishops tell us it only kills the missionary spirit. This is most grave. Meeting with Bishop Tissier a few weeks ago, myself and Father Hugo, we pointed this out to Bishop Tissier, and he admitted that, well, okay, maybe it was all right, but, you know, yeah. He admitted that what we said was right, but then he wouldn't admit that what he said was wrong. And then also, he says that, but it does kill the missionary spirit. It does kill the missionary spirit. It essentially kills the soul and kills the faith, not the spirit. Killing the missionary spirit is irrelevant. We're dealing with the most grave of heresies. And when you deflect from this which destroys the soul and say that it only kills the spirit, which does not destroy the soul, that is leading souls to perdition. So that's extremely, extremely serious. We find that the death of the society and its doctrine happened on July 14, 2012 in a public manner. We find the repetition of it in every way today. You look at SSPX.org right now, one last thing, concerning the indult mass. And it says, it's true that the motu proprio, summorum pontificum, ended the canonical struggle. I had the paper with me, but I don't know where it is. Ended the canonical struggle. I think I gave it to somebody. Over the new Mass. Over the legitimacy of the true Mass. But that's not all. And the Society cannot recommend that people attend the indult Mass regularly. So it's okay for you to go to the motu proprio Mass, but we cannot recommend that you attend it regularly. And look at SSPX.org. Number one, the motu proprio, summorum pontificum, did not, absolutely did not, end the canonical struggle over the Mass. That is a lie. Summorum pontificum was a wicked document which deceived millions of souls, and that document says that the new Mass, the old new Mass is the ordinary magisterium of the Church. I mean, the ordinary rite of the Latin Rite, and that is a lie. It is not ordinary because it was not legitimately promulgated. It is not ordinary because it is a wicked rite that is Protestant. It is a bastard rite that leads souls to hell. It is non-Catholic. It has no place in the Catholic Church. Therefore, it is a sin and it is wicked to allow anyone to say that it is the ordinary or correct rite for Catholics. Summorum pontificum says it is the ordinary rite. Furthermore, it says that the Latin Tridentine Mass, the true Mass, is the extraordinary rite. In order for this to be extraordinary rite, it means that it is extraordinary in place of the ordinary rite, which means that the Catholic Mass is an extraordinary replacement for the bastard Mass. That's what it means. So the Latin Tridentine Mass is the extraordinary replacement for the Protestant, bastard, non-Catholic, satanic, modern Mass. And that is sacrilege. That is blasphemy. That is a mockery of the truth. It is the most wicked. At least before the indult of 1984, if you had the Latin Tridentine Mass, it was an objective sign that you stood for the Catholic faith. And if you did not accept that faith in its whole and entirety, you rejected that Mass and you went to the new Mass. That was a much better situation. Now, you can have your Latin Tridentine Mass and you can accept the false religion. It's just like a woman who decides to live with her husband because she wants to live with him along with the 11 other members of the harem. So she is going to approve of him being with all these adulterous women as long as she gets to stay there in the same house as well. And she approves of the adulteries. When the wife approves of the adulteries, it makes the sin worse than when the husband is committing the adultery alone. She cannot approve of his adultery. And here we find that when we have a Latin Mass, which is approving of the new Mass, this is approving of the adultery of the new Mass. Summorum pontificum is a wicked, evil, satanic document. Furthermore, from a canonical perspective, if you went to court and you tried to say in a court of law that we have the right to say the Latin Tridentine Mass because Summorum Pontificum says that it was never promulgated, you would be laughed out of court. Why is that? Never promulgated, these two words that are contained in Summorum Pontificum, in quotations, they are an aberration from the text. It is clear from the context of the entire document and from the multiple statements in the document, Pope Benedict XVI says this: Summorum Pontificum is a replacement and a widening of the Quatuor ad Hincanos, the indult of 84, and Ecclesia Dei Adflicta, the indult of 88. These two indults presuppose the illegitimacy of the new Mass. Therefore, when Summorum Pontificum says that it is the continuation and replacement of Summorum Pontificum, of Quatuor ad Hincanos and Ecclesia Dei Adflicta, it is reiterating that the Latin Mass is abrogated. Secondly, it says that this new promulgation, this new law of Summorum Pontificum, is being put into place by my apostolic generosity, Pope Benedict XVI. And it will be taking effect on September the 14th, 2007. It is put into power by his own apostolic authority, which means he rejects the authority of St. Pius V, that his promulgation of the Latin Mass in quo primum is abrogated. Thirdly, it maintains its abrogation because he gives a specific date in which the new law is going to take place, September the 14th. Furthermore, he has an accompanying document which goes with Summorum Pontificum, which says, some people say that this opening and widening of the Mass, which means again, continuation of the indult, therefore the Mass was abrogated. Continuation of the indult will be a threat to Vatican II. It is not a threat to Vatican II. The Latin Mass was the Mass of the Council. There is no threat to Vatican II. Furthermore, he gives a time limit to this new law. He says, we will consider this law in a 3-year period. After 3 years, we will analyze whether or not it was a good idea to extend to in a universal way the Latin Mass. So you see in multiple places in Summorum Pontificum, it is stated clearly that the Latin Mass was abrogated, 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 and abrogated. It is gone, 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 and gone. And the only reason that you can have your Latin Mass is if you accept the new Mass. And then you have two words, numquam obligatam. That's an aberration in the text. Has no value. You must consider the entire text, all the things that are stated in it, all the many points contained. Numquam obrigata was put there for idiot traditional Catholics who wanted to be deceived. And since most traditional Catholics are morons and they like being deceived, it's for them. But the bishops and the priests throughout the world are fully aware that they can only celebrate the Latin Tridentine Mass because of the gracious generosity of Pope Benedict XVI, which is a lie. Now, SSPX.org says it was a good document. SSPX.org says it sealed the canonical problems of the Mass. And that is why SSPX.org says you can go to the Summorum Pontificum Masses. That's why it says that. These changes are grave and they lead to a loss of faith. And you see that since 2007, many Catholics going to SSPX Masses are now going to the indult and the motu proprio Masses. Before 2007, the flow went the other way. They went from Novus Ordo to indult, indult to SSPX. Now they go from SSPX to indult, indult to Novus Ordo, which is the intention of the entire indult. And I think that's sufficient for now. because we can't go over every little detail. But basically, there has been a complete doctrinal shift. This doctrinal shift must be condemned, and it must be publicly condemned. And we priests, about 50 of us, but about 25 priests of the society, just recently Father Trauner, now Father Sauer, German priest, 74 years old, will be joining the resistance next week. And so he's been forced to sign a document against the faith. He refused to sign it. He is now being removed at the age of 74, and he is going to be staying with Father Zabi up in the Carmel. And so now we have some more German priests in the resistance, and more priests are joining each month, a few here, a few there. So we're now 25 or 30 priests of the society. Since last year, 22 priests are missing from the Society of St. Pius X in 1 year. And we have about 25 or 25 to 30 priests of the society, about 50 priests altogether in our little resistance movement of reaction against the liberalism going on in the Society of St. Pius X. There has never been this large of an exodus or this large of an expulsion or departure since the foundation of the Society of St. Pius X until 2012. This is the first time. And this time, we are standing up. Why? Because we must preach the truth that we were always taught to preach. We must condemn the errors we were always taught to condemn. And if we don't do so, we don't save our souls. We have an obligation to do that. And therefore, we must do it clearly, boldly, simply, in such a way that even an idiot can understand. There is a new doctrine in the society. It is not the Catholic doctrine. It must be condemned, and we must preach against it. And the faithful also must speak against it. They must talk to other faithful and try to spread the faith. Our Lady of Quito said that in the end of the 20th century, and in our times, many souls would be damned simply because of silence. Simply because no one speaks the truth. Those who shall speak shall remain silent. And this we cannot do. And I'll close with that. If anybody have any questions or whatever, we can take at this time. So, anybody have any questions or what's happening in the parish here? Yes, go ahead. The reason why the priests are sticking with it is basically comfort. That's the primary reason. And not just material comfort, staying in the rectory, but also the fact that priests live in a community. You want to be with your community. Money is the root of all evil, and it's an essential problem today, just like it always has been. I remember when I was a child in the 1970s, about 100 priests passing through our house visiting Father Hannafin. And I remember the vast majority of those priests, how am I going to survive? Where's my parish? What about my pension? What about my health insurance? And Father Hannafin would say, if you stay with the Latin Mass and Catholic tradition, you will not starve. You will be taken care of. You will be all right. Maybe, Frank, but I don't know. I mean, I need to see some security. And they left. They never fought with tradition. I have now heard that in the last year from many priests. One recently, what about my health insurance? Another one recently, what about my health insurance? Just in the last few months, 2 different priests talking to me about health insurance. Also, in the last 8 months, many priests, well, where's my parish? Where's my rectory? Where am I going to stay? How am I going to survive? What's going to happen? I mean, even Bishop Williamson was telling people, he's been telling many priests the last year, don't leave the society, don't go, unless you've got a daddy warbucks to take care of you. You've put your ducks in a row and you've got a place to go and you got all your needs taken care of. Then you go ahead and go. But if not, then just, do what good you can on the inside. That's demonic advice. He has no right to be giving such demonic advice as that. But that's what he's done. And we're hearing this from all sides. We either stand for the truth or we don't. But the real reason why many priests, there's 2 reasons. One is those that are worried about the problems going on in the society are afraid of their security. A second is many don't have a problem with it. Remember, in order to change, St. Basil has a great sermon on it. St. Basil gives a sermon on the mob. And he says, in the year 30 AD, when Christ began to preach, Caiaphas and Annas were ready to crucify him. They would have crucified him the next day. But they couldn't. Why did they have to wait 3.5 years? Because it took that long to prepare the mob. He said there are two parts of the crucifixion of Christ from Caiaphas and Annas' side. One, they have the power and they want to crucify him. But they can't do it until they get the crowd ready. And even though Christ is performing all these miracles, they're always putting in lies. He cured on the Sabbath, you know. Look at this, look at that. Oh, look at that guy. He just cured that guy. He's a jerk. Why did he cure that guy? And so that they have all these lies and deceptions were slowly putting the people over 3.5 years. And then the time came when they all said, let his blood be upon us and upon our children. And they were very happy when he was crucified. The mob was very happy. So likewise, in our present situation, there are many priests who are looking forward to being approved. Looking forward to being with their buddy bishops and buddy priests and saying Mass in the local rectories and local churches and giving talks in the cathedral. There are many faithful who are looking forward to, you know, not being condemned anymore and being normal and going to, you don't have to go home and change into your dress anymore. You can go straight in your jeans to church on Sunday. You don't have to go and get a veil in the back of the church. You can go in, you know, take the Walkman out of your ear because you're still spiritual, and then kneel down in your jeans and have a really spiritual Mass and go out and be normal and abort half your babies and NFP the rest of them and live a holy life because you did your part. You had 3.5 kids. And you're a traditional Catholic. Kyrie eleison, incense. It's beautiful, man. It's great. Don't forget there's people that like it. Yes.
Father, when you speak about the SSPX faithful that are afraid to go to resistance masses?
Yes. Well, the fear is basically, there have been several cases of people refuse Holy Communion. Only a few that have actually been refused. You know, Hugh Dolan over in New York, they've refused people in Australia. In Florida, the family was thrown out from the school and driven away. But those are actually few actual instances of real refusals of Holy Communion. But the threat has been there, and the threat remains, and the ostracization is the thing. It was in the gospel. At the 3rd year of our Lord Jesus Christ, remember the parents of the man who was born blind. The Jews came to him and said, "Is this your son? How did your son get cured?" And he says, "That he is our son, we know. That he was born blind, we know. But how he was cured, we don't know." They were lying. They knew exactly how he was cured, right? But he is of age. He's over 21 now. Why don't you go and ask him? And it says, why did they say that? Because of the fear of being thrown out of the synagogue. So the fear of being thrown out of the synagogue is not a new fear. That's the fear we're dealing with. The fear of being thrown out of the synagogue. The fear of being thrown out of the church. You know, Matthew McDevitt down in Texas, he was thrown out from being the choir director. His wife was fired from being the the treasurer, because they were on the wrong side of the fence, right? And so and others refused Holy Communion. So the fear of refusal of Holy Communion, the fear of being thrown out, it's a big fear everywhere in the world. We experience it in Australia. In Asia, here in the United States, in Europe. They're terrified of being thrown out. They shouldn't be. Because our Lord said, "Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you for my name's sake." So we shouldn't be. But the fact is that we are. And then we forget the very reason why we're here. We are traditional Catholics. And we are traditional Catholics because this is what Christ demands us to be, and the church has turned against us, and so therefore we allow ourselves to be persecuted by the church. And we get thrown out. And we have Mass in the Grange Hall. We have Mass in our little house churches that we build on our own. Well, instead of having Mass in the local cathedral and the local parish church because we were thrown out, we are the people who were thrown out. That's what we do. Traditional Catholics are people that get thrown out. So we shouldn't be overly disturbed about being thrown out again. But for some reason we are. We don't want to be thrown out again. Many people have told me, for instance, and told Father Giselle and Father Hugo, you know, I already did the Holiday Inn thing. I already did Mass in the garage. I don't want to do it again. I'm tired. We're experiencing that as well. Yeah.
It's like the SSPX is the new Novus Ordo.
That's correct.
All over again.
That's correct. It's the new Novus Ordo. And it's going exactly the same way, using exactly the same tactics. For instance, the authority tactic. You have to trust your superiors, trust the bishop. You know, how many times have you heard that? The bishop knows the faith better than you do. You got to trust the bishop. Well, we've heard that so many thousands of times, only now it's trust Bishop Follet. And he's a lot less to trust than the local bishop. The local bishop has authority directly from God. Bishop Follet doesn't. The local bishop is a part of the divine hierarchy established by Christ 2,000 years ago. Bishop Follet is not. It is a much more grave thing to go against your local bishop than it is to go against the superior general of the Society of St. Pius X, who lives in some little house in Menzingen surrounded by some ugly cows. That's nothing. It's a very serious matter to not obey our local bishop. And we don't obey him because he's a modernist. We don't obey him because he's saying the new Mass. We don't obey him because of his problems. You see? Yeah.
I've heard scuttlebutt about Norvo Soto priests coming out of the Norvo Soto and directly into the society without conditional ordinations or anything.
Yes.
Is that a serious thing to be thinking about?
I know that's happened to some. It's not been consistent. It's not been consistent. You know, I mean, I think that they need to be conditionally reordained. We conditionally reordain them. Like just recently, for instance, Father Iglesia is a good example. He's now with us in the resistance movement. Father Iglesia is a priest in Spain who has been trying to get conditionally reordained by Bishop de Galarreta or one of the bishops of the society for the last 3 or 4 years. But they won't do it. Similarly, the same thing with confirmations. There's a sister who came from the Norvo Soto tradition this year in Germany, and she wanted to be conditionally reordained. Father Schmidberger says you have to have your head examined because you were ordained by a modernist bishop. What's your problem? So he says he refused, absolutely refused, to allow her and others to be conditionally reordained. They are conditionally confirmed, not just ordination. Confirmation is much worse. Confirmation sacrament they've destroyed the matter, the form of that sacrament. And in the priesthood, it's doubtful. In other words, the argument against the invalidity of the new Mass, the new priesthood, is not as it's based on intention. So it's kind of a weak argument, but at the same time, it's legitimate because it's a real argument. It's weak, but it's a real argument. And therefore, it creates a small doubt. And in the case of the sacraments, a small doubt is sufficient. If you've got a small doubt, you go ahead and you remove that small doubt. You see, even if it's a small doubt, it must be removed because it's too important. Yes.
So are we hypocritical if we believe everything you're saying, but we're still going to that Mass, to the SSPX?
Yes. I mean, here's the problem: is that we liken it. The example we've been given over the course of the last few months is the chicken with the head cut off. Right? When the chicken's head is cut off, it's not alive anymore. It's dead. However, you can't pluck the feathers right away because he's bouncing around. So there's a little bit of a leeway between the head cut off and plucking the feathers. Or even when someone dies, there's a leeway between the time of death and burial. If you wait too long, you got a major problem on your hands. You can't wait too long. But there is a little bit of a leeway. And so I would say in the case of the society, it's dead because it's changed its theology. But it's still bouncing around. I mean, you still hear, there's still leftovers of the old days, so to speak, here and there. But it's dead, essentially, because the official position has changed. But I would say that there's a little bit of leeway between saying, I can't go there anymore. Each faithful is making that decision at their own time. We have about 50 people in New Jersey that have said, no, we're not going to the SSPX Masses anymore. We got about 20 people in Toronto, Canada that said, no, we're not going to SSPX Masses anymore. We can't do it in conscience. But that's something which you have to kind of come to. It's just like even with regard to supposing you're a Protestant, you want to become Catholic. Okay, I'm not going to baptize you. First, you have to prove to me that you understand the Catholic faith. You know your catechism. Secondly, you've got to prove to me that you really have truly rejected the Protestant religion and you realize that it's truly against God and leads you to hell. Then we get baptized. See what I mean? So it is objectively true that the SSPX is dead, theologically speaking. It's in the same theological boat as the Fraternity of St. Peter. And therefore, it's got the same conclusion, which means it's a compromised faith. Therefore, it's right to no longer go to the masses there. However, you have to come to that realization. You have to understand that, and then you have to be ready to take the consequences of it. Yeah, yes.
So, Father, if within the SSPX, if there's an ordained priest who truly believes in the Mass and saying the Mass,
Yes.
whether he agrees with what's going on right now or not,
Mm-hmm.
but he has a personal obligation, responsibility, belief to say the Mass that he was ordained to say,
Right.
why wouldn't that be valid?
No, the Mass is valid. I mean, when the new Mass is probably valid 90% of the time. It's just a sacrilege, right? It's a sacrilege because it's a Protestant Mass. When a priest of a Fraternity of St. Peter says Mass, it's valid. It's valid. But the problem is that the Mass is a public act of worship which is done in the setting of our public belief. It's a public expression of our faith. If the priest, say an Arian priest, like Arius said Mass, a valid Mass, he didn't even believe Jesus Christ was God, but his Mass was valid. So when he says the Mass, it's a valid Mass, but it will be a mortal sin to go to that Mass because he did not believe the Catholic faith. He was believing a heretical faith. And the easy example is the example of the Pax priests in Hungary in the 20th century. The Pax priests in the 1950s, there was no question of new Mass, no question of Vatican II, no question of modernism. The Pax priests in Hungary were told by the communists, you can still say your Mass, you can still teach your catechism, no problem. All I am demanding, do not criticize communism. And they were called the Pax priests because they made peace with communism. The faithful refused to go to their Masses. They refused to go. Cardinal Mindszenty refused to be a Pax priest. Therefore, he was in the Gulag, 14 years or however long it was. He was in prison for many years and tortured. Other priests refused to be Pax priests. They did not tell the priests to accept communism. Nowhere near as bad as our priests. They didn't tell them to accept communism. All they had to do was not condemn it. But in our case, we're accepting the error. It's much worse. And remember, it's the official teaching that matters. That the priest doesn't like it means the priest doesn't like it. Imagine you had to check in the heart of every priest. You could never know whether it was a real Mass. You can't check the heart of every priest. Maybe he believes, maybe he doesn't believe, maybe he's liberal, maybe he's conservative, maybe he's a sedevacantist, maybe he's an atheist. Anything's possible. You don't know what's in his mind and heart, but you do know what the official teaching of the church is, and you do know that when that priest stands up as a representative of the church, he's a representative of the church. So you don't have to worry about what's in his mind and heart. The representative of the SSPX is representing the official position and teaching of the SSPX, which is the new Mass is legitimate, Vatican II is good, therefore you accept those things by being there. Yes.
You mentioned the word sedevacantist.
Yes.
Their Mass is valid?
Of course, yeah, their Masses are valid, yes. Yes. But you shouldn't go to them because they reject the Pope. But a similar thing is the Vatican II's Mass, is the indult. The indult Mass, the priest is saying a valid Mass, but he accepts the new Mass. You shouldn't go to the indult Mass, shouldn't go to the motu proprio Mass, because they accept the new Mass. So it's the same principle. These are important matters of faith. And remember, people can live without the Mass, but they can't live without the faith. Even priests have had to live without the Mass, in the Gulag and in trips and so, yes.
Is there a difference between the new Mass and somebody saying the traditional Mass, but believing that the new Mass is valid? Is that person invalid saying the traditional Mass?
No, not invalid, but it's immoral. It's immoral. Immoral.
Is he still able to consecrate?
Yes. hmm
So he's still able to give out communion and
Yes.
listen to confession. He's
That's
still
right.
performing the sacrament.
He is. He's performing the sacrament.
Immoral. So
That's why
in
you...
essence, we have to judge that. We have to.
Yeah, you have to judge, but you can't judge his interior. You're judging the exterior. Right. So in other words, it's like, for instance, there are priests of fraternity of St. Peter who individually reject the new Mass, but they officially accept it. So their individual rejection doesn't mean much. See what I mean? Because even though these individual priests personally, a few of them, truly reject the new Mass, they're in a society that accepts the new Mass. So as representatives of that society, they are acceptors of the new Mass. In their hearts, they reject the new Mass. But that doesn't mean anything in a public act of worship. In a public act of worship, they're the representative of that community. And that's what we're dealing with in society. And it's hard to believe. Remember, there takes time. It's a very difficult time in the society. And look at what's happening. Look what's happening. Throughout the world, faithful are leaving the Society of St. Pius X. They've been leaving for the last 5 years at least. Throughout the world, ever since 2007, there has been an exodus from the society worldwide. Only a few of them are coming to us in the resistance, and we've only been around for a year. We got about 3,000 people coming to our masses. Now, they're all small little groups, here and there, and they have masses intermittently, and only a few priests to take care of them. But many more than 3,000 have left. For instance, Father Schmidberger reported last year, in the official count, 300 less faithful in Germany than the year before. And we don't have any chapels over there. And that's just in the official roster. The actual number will be probably 500 or 600, something like that. But that's 300 in the official roster. Germany, the society is shrinking. We got 50 chapels in Germany. The average number of faithful per chapel is 50 per chapel. So what is that? It says they have a couple chapels big and a couple of chapels small, but there aren't really that many. What's that? 2,500 faithful, 3,000 faithful, and 300 of them are gone in 1 year. It's 10%. So you see, that's a very big drop in only 1 year, and that's just in the official roster. But yes.
Is there an official reason that priests are given when they're expelled from society?
It varies. I was told that I preached that Bishop Fillet said that 95% of the council was okay, and therefore I would be expelled. And I did preach that, and he did say that. They just never said it was wrong. In my expulsion letter, they never mentioned that anything I said was wrong. Same thing with Father Chazelle. They just said, you taught this, you said that, you said this, you said that, but it never said that any of it was wrong. So they never actually gave a canonical reason. They never gave a canonical crime, never gave a canonical reason, which they're supposed to do. But they did say, you had preached negative things, therefore you are expelled. So, yeah, but canonically the answer is no, but they did say something. Yeah, yes.
What's the difference between many of us, or speaking for myself anyway, I have little respect for this present Pope or the other Vatican II Pope.
Right.
So what's the difference between those and Sede Vacantis?
Sede Vacantis, I think Bishop Williamson describes it well in his last letter that he wrote. Sede Vacantists reject the papacy, that he's not the Father. He's not the Father. There's an essential difference. The Sede Vacantis says that Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, they are not our Holy Father. They're not the Holy Father. They are not successors of St. Peter. Whereas we say, they're more like Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, in the book of Daniel, he was a bit proud. He was called the greatest emperor by God, in the dream of Daniel. And then Nebuchadnezzar got too proud. And so God punished Nebuchadnezzar by making him believe that he was a cow. And for 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar lived in the castle and he ate grass because he thought he was a cow. Now, during those 7 years, he was still the emperor, but they didn't exactly listen to his commands. His only commands he gave was moo, and that was it. So for the 7 years, he remained the emperor, But he didn't obey, they didn't obey his commands. And then one day, when his 7 years were finished, God removed the punishment, and he got back his sanity, and he realized, grass isn't that good. And he went back, and he was the emperor. He acted as the emperor. So he remained the emperor during those 7 years, but he was mad. He was insane. So therefore, the people of Babylon did not obey him, but they still respected him as the emperor. They made sure he had good grass in his diet every day so he didn't die. They made sure he had good milk, and they fed him so that he lived during those 7 years on his vegetarian diet. And then at the end of the 7 years, they obeyed him again. And so likewise, so we say, the Pope is mad, the Pope is insane. Therefore you can't obey him because he's insane. But once he comes back to sanity, we obey him. No problem. Yes.
Chicken is still bouncing,
Yes.
but I want to save my soul. So I have no way to get the sacraments. Do I simply take spiritual?
Yes. Yes. What you do is, here's an example. The one family in Montreal refused to go to the society masses anymore, right? And they say they can't in conscience do that, just one family. And I had not been able to go there for like more than 2 months, maybe 3 months. So a month and a half ago, I said, well, I got to get there to the family somehow. And I couldn't get a ticket to Montreal because it's too expensive. And the people in Quebec had asked to have the Mass or whatever, visit sometime, but I said, I don't know, maybe in December or something I'll visit them. But because of the people in Montreal have been so long without the Mass, one family, I said, okay, I've got to get in the Mass somehow on a Saturday, at least get in the Mass and sacraments, and then continue on to Toronto. So because of that family saying we won't accept the society new Mass anymore, so I had to find a way to get there because there's no other priest to give them the sacraments. So I flew to Quebec. I said, okay, we'll talk to these people in Quebec. We'll say Mass in Quebec because it's cheaper to go to Quebec, and then I can go down to Toronto from Quebec. And so you just tell people, you just drive up, a 3-hour drive. You drive up, come to the Mass, and we'll say the Mass. So now we started the chapel effectively in Quebec way in advance. And about 30 people came to Mass. And one of them is a case of a marriage where the society is refusing to do the marriage of a young couple. They're trying to push off their marriage for no legitimate reason, and they're trying to get married, and there's no legitimate reason pushing off the marriage. Well, now we find out about that, and we're going to do the marriage in August the 31st. So now the couple is going to be able to be married, whereas they were going to be delayed for another year after already being late over a year in their marriage. The people are getting the Mass because of one family. So what happens is that when somebody stands up for the truth, somehow God brings blessings. And just like, this is not the first time this has happened. Christ is more important than incense. It's just a matter of what's more important. You know that in Australia, in Streaky Bay, Father Cummins, back in the 70s, an old lady said to her, how am I going to be buried? You're driving all over Australia, going thousands of miles, only one priest. How am I going to get the sacraments? What's going to happen when I'm dying? And he said, my experience has been that whenever I'm needed, I'm not very far away. And that's what happens. It's happened to me many times. It's happened to priests all the time. Like one sister told me, Father, you have to bury me. And it's in Kentucky. My home in Kentucky, sister, and so I said, look, sister, I know we want to bury you and everything, but look, you got the local priest here. At that time it's Father Dardis, and she was still living in the convent, the Nazareth convent, and which is there's basically straight from hell, all of her fellow sisters there. And she would go to the Latin Mass and everything, and they hated even Novosodal burials. They do the burials themselves, do little Wiccan ceremonies they do, because they don't like the priest doing the burials. The nuns do their own burials. Well, she went to Mass in the morning, then she came out of Mass. She was about 85 years old, but she was in perfect health. She came out of Mass in the morning, she went into Bardstown, she tripped on the concrete, she hit her head, had an aneurysm, died that day, and we had a solemn high Mass of 3 priests, and I did the funeral. So that she said, you have to bury me, and it has to be you that bury me, and Father Tim, and so on, and we're going to have the burial. I said, well, I can't just come back from India, or, and do a burial, you know. So, but the thing is, so then she died right then and there, got a solemn high mass, we did the funeral. The nuns were so mad that they just wanted to kill us, you know, but they couldn't do anything about it. So she got the traditional burial when the nuns didn't want it. She got the burial exactly as she wanted. She got anointed, everything, and it wasn't supposed to happen. So, you know, this kind of thing happens all the time. God will always provide. We just have to have the faith. Yes.
Doesn't the SSPX leadership realize what Scripture says about strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter? Because I find myself having apathy and just dragging myself, making myself go to Mass.
Yep.
And have even missed Mass a few times because because they have lost the zeal.
Yeah.
No longer a missionary
Mm-hmm.
priest, fighting a good fight.
Right.
And I just, I'm losing heart, and I bet others are too.
Well, you know, and that's true. The thing is that it's part of what I mentioned at the beginning. The death was 2012, July the 14th. But you can't get there without dying first. You know, you have to first, the heart starts to slow down, the cancer starts to kick in. You know, there's a whole process before you reach that death. Part of this process was the loss of the apostolic spirit. And that happened about 18 years ago. And you're seeing all the signs of this weakening of the Society of St. Pius X. No more opening of new missions. We're building chapels in a few places, but we're not opening new missions. We're building priories, but the priory doesn't take care of more missions. For instance, when I was ordained a priest, I think we had about 27 priests in the United States. We had 105 chapels. Now we have 84 last year, so now it's 90-something this year, and we have 103 chapels. So 2 less chapels, and 3 times the number of priests. And they're building priories. Like, for instance, when they built the priory here, for instance, did they add any new chapels? No. Same is true of the other new priories. They build new priories, but they don't add new chapels. All that happens is you reduce the amount of work that each priest is doing. Now this spreads to the faithful. You know, what's in the superior spreads to the subjects. So the superior is no longer doing the work he's supposed to be doing. The superior is no longer working like he's supposed to work. Like, you know, in the military, the captain, he's the first one to get up in the morning, he's the last one to go to bed at night, he's the first guy on the battlefield, he's the last guy off the battlefield. That's the way it's supposed to be. But now the priest is the first guy in bed, the last guy up, his guy, and so it's all changed. And what does that do? That demoralizes the troops. So this demoralization has been developing over many years. It just reached its culmination last year, you know. But yeah, you were saying yes.
I've heard that the new seminary was needed because the Nova Scotia bishops have promised to send their seminarians to the new SSPX seminary. So it's good for that there was a deal signed for that.
All I know is that Father Asher said last year that, I don't know what, 2 years ago at the Ariesville pilgrimage? So not last year, but the year before, the Ariesville pilgrimage in New York, that we need a big seminary in Virginia because the bishops are going to send their seminarians there. But he didn't say that, so the bishops can do that. He didn't say definitively that's what they were going to do, but that's what they were hoping. I think that's probably where that comes from. Father Asher, 2 years ago at the Ariesville pilgrimage, making that announcement of one of the reasons why we need a bigger seminary, you know, but yes.
I read something somewhere where it said that Bishop Pulley actually mentions that at the groundbreaking ceremony over in Virginia.
It's possible, and it probably was recorded, I would guess,
I would think so.
but I don't know. I mean, I know that they say they need to do big seminary because of all the vocations, but when you look at I don't think it's going to work out like they expect. You know, all these new thousands of seminarians, I don't think it's going to work out like they expect. I don't think so. But yes.
Are you going to start a seminary?
Yes. We're starting the seminary in October. October of this year, 2013. I don't know how we're going to survive, but we're starting it. So it's going to be in Kentucky. There is, right now, there's approximately 20 young men that are interested in coming, but it'll be impossible for all 20 of them to come. But I don't think it'll be 20 that will walk through the door. But nonetheless, there's about 20. We've got 4 young men working on their visas down in South America to come up this way. We've got a couple from Europe working on the visas, the beginnings of working on the visas to come over this way. And then we've got some in the Philippines, more difficult to get their visas taken care of, coming over this way. And then we have, of course, here in the United States and Canada, some candidates. We have for the professors, basically, you know, that's the problem. We got basically 3 professors on site, but we need to get it over that. You know, and because this would be, not all will be full-time. Then we have some professors who are going to be helping part-time by, for instance, using Skype and teaching partly that way, plus coming and staying for, say, a week or a month, doing blocks of classes and then going out and coming back. So it'll be, and so there's a number of priests that may be helping in a limited capacity, coming in and going out. And then, of course, some of the few lay teachers we may need. I haven't been able to put those together yet. There's a couple of them that I've been working on, but not able to put together yet. We have the building in the top of the hill. It's about 9 bedrooms in it, which is right across from the chapel. And there's another schoolhouse, which is in bad shape. It's got to be repaired, that we can put several bedrooms in, and the classrooms, plus the rectory for the priests, which has 7 bedrooms in it. And then there's some other places we might be able to put our hands on to use temporarily. It was the place where Father Cyprian began the Our Lady of Guadalupe Monastery in 1989. So he was there for 2 years, a little more than 2 years, before going to Silver City, New Mexico. And so the same buildings are kind of being resurrected, and we'll use those in Boston, Kentucky.
So should we all move to Kentucky to help you?
No. But no, I mean, the thing is, I think you got to remember that we're in an many people ask about coming. I tell them, oh, don't come. But a couple have already moved there anyway, just a few. We have to remember, don't forget that we're in an unstable situation. Our only stability is the Catholic faith. And we used to have a great confidence that, look, the Society of St. Pius X was never supposed to change. It was never supposed to give up the fight for the faith. You know, I mean, Pope, I mean, he's just a Pope. I mean, you know, Pope, fight. If the Pope gives up, what's the big deal? He's just a Pope. But Bishop Fillet and the Society was never supposed to happen. Well, the Society has given up the faith. Well, that means, you know, the stability is gone. What little stability that we have had in the past is gone. And, you know, what's to say that we don't give up the faith tomorrow? Now, today we're holding the faith, and that's a great blessing. That's our great strength, our great blessings, we're holding the faith. But tomorrow we might change our minds and become modernists, you know. I mean, you need to follow the faith wherever it is, but we have to say, look, is it really, humanly speaking, we're in a very unstable situation. We shouldn't be alive right now. We shouldn't be surviving right now. When Father Giselle and I began last year, 2 priests and 1 faithful in the Philippines. And that's because my secretary, and if she didn't show up at Mass, I would kill her. So we had 1 faithful there because he was forced, and then 2 priests in Manila. And that was the first Mass. And then we've spread since then. Now there are other priests that have joined us. There's actually maybe 25 priests or so, but they're working with us in doing the apostolic work that we're doing. Father Valen, myself, Father Giselle, Father Hugo, Father Voigt, and Father, so it's 5. There's about 7 priests.
Father Athanasius?
No, in St. Athanasius, they're supporting us, but they're doing what they've always been doing. They're not doing missions. Majority of the priests who are in the resistance, about 45 to 50 priests, the majority of them are not doing mission work. There's maybe 10 of us that are. You know, Father Thomas Aquinas in South America, Father Cardozo in South America, you know, Father Trincado to a certain extent in South America. And then in North America, you know, myself and Father Giselle and Father Hugo. And then in Asia, Father Valen, Father Suelo, and Father Giselle. You know, and so the other priests are not yet doing that. We're hoping to have some other priests join us in that particular battle, but it's not yet happened. It's not yet happened, but yes.
Father, with the seminary, how will you face the challenge of ordination?
Bishop Williamson. Bishop Williamson has agreed to do the ordinations and to, take care of that. He'll come and give talks to seminarians once in a while. He's not really fully in favor of the seminary. He's kind of tolerating it. He supports it, but from a distance. And he'll show up and do the ordinations. He's agreed to that, but if he doesn't like the guys, he won't ordain them, But nonetheless, but he's agreed to do the ordinations. But younger ones who are yes men, younger ones who don't have any backbone, who are like photocopies of each other, younger ones who are following the new program, new theology, new spirit, new direction of the society. These are the ones being put in authority. And the old ones, even if they agree with what's going on, even if they're not, anti-liberal, if they're too independently minded, they're not going to be allowed to have positions of authority. Remember, it's really communism, especially Stalinistic communism. Stalin did not only kill anti-communists, he also killed communists. In fact, he killed many communists, particularly any communist who he thought might be a threat to his own position and authority. We're seeing the same thing in the Society of St. Pius X, so that even priests that are liberal, if those priests are too independent, too capable, too popular, too influential, then requiem aeternam, they're going to be relegated. Not just the good guys, so to speak. It's also a wise tactic of the devil in the case of the Gulag. Not only did they throw the Catholics in the Gulag, they threw atheists, Protestants, tax, evaders, drug dealers. Everybody was thrown in. So it was all a big mess. And so you see a similar mess in the society. Not only are the good priests being punished, but also some of the bad ones, or some of the ones that don't really care, some of the ones not, so that there's in order to facilitate confusion. It's a very effective way to change all things. And then to keep a general spirit of fear, so that people don't stand up. Yeah, yes.
Do you know where Father Cyprian stands?
Father Cyprian, tried to meet him several times. He agreed to meet, but then when we came, he disappeared. Father Cyprian, he is 100% behind Bishop Fillet. And I think that it's more because of his personal respect for Bishop Fillet. And then also for Father LaRue. Father LaRue trained 7 of his priests. He has 7 priests down there in the Silver City. And they have been formed by Father LaRue. Father Hugo and I talked to several of those priests, complete liberals. Absolute liberals. They have a totally new theology. Like I told one of them, I says, you and I were trained in the same building in Winona. But I didn't learn that crap that you learned. You learned different garbage. You didn't learn the same things. New theology, new way of thinking about philosophy and history, totally incorrect, yes.
Will resistance ever come to a point where they'll be able to run retreats?
Yes, I was hoping to run retreats this year, and but unfortunately I wasn't able to schedule any. Even now I want to try to schedule some retreats in Kentucky there somehow before October, because, and it's already August now, so I'm going to try to get in 2 retreats. I'm trying to get a minimum of 2 retreats in before the end of this year, and now it's already August. I was hoping to do at least 6 retreats this year. So far we've done 0, and it's because of just traveling around and so on. And so I'm hoping to have, I was hoping to have a minimum of 6 retreats this year. It did not work out because of the perpetual travel and the difficulties. But hopefully try to get at least 2 in this year. But the answer is yes, but we haven't been able to put it together yet, unfortunately. But yes.
I'm planning a retreat on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Should I go? How's it going to those photos?
No. They've changed. They've changed the way they're teaching the retreats. The spirit has changed, the doctrine, they're bringing up new things. It's one thing they're doing, I think, let's see, I can't remember the example now. Somebody just on retreat recently was telling me. What were they bringing up? Well, I'll give an example of a priest retreat. A priest retreat in Germany last month. The priest superior of the retreat preaching 2 priests, of which Bishop Fillet was one of the priests on the retreat. The priest said in the German retreat house, of 20 or 30 priests on the retreat, the priest said, In the present situation of the world today, families cannot and should not be having more than 5 or 6 kids. Now, as a priest, preaching to priests, and one of the priests at the retreat was Bishop Fillet. Well, that's just last month. The priest told me that. One of the priests who was on the retreat.
What do you know about Father Emily?
I don't know what Father Emily's doing. I would hope he's not doing that, but I don't know.
So you would recommend not to go to a retreat?
Right now, I wouldn't really recommend it because they're using these retreats for their brainwashing. They're putting in the catechisms, for the Sister Benedicta went on retreat in, Germany. Now, this sister, who's kind of with us right now, she's a German sister. She's actually Italian by blood. She's an Italian citizen. But she's born and raised in Germany, but she's Italian citizen. And Sister Benedicta was in Novus Ordo last year. She joined Catholic tradition in February of 2013. One of the priests that told her to join was a Fraternity of St. Peter priest, one of her confessors from a little convent a while back. And he said, I would go if I was able to, but you go ahead and go, So when she first came into tradition, she took a little sabbatical from her convent, and they gave her 15 CDs of Archbishop Lefebvre. So she listened to the sermons of Archbishop Lefebvre. Then she went to retreat in Germany with Father Schmidberger. And she walked in the retreat house and sat down and listened to the conferences. She goes, wait a minute. That's not the same as what I was hearing in those Archbishop Lefebvre talks. So she went out and looked at the sign. She said, Society of St. Pius X. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. Maybe I got the wrong address. So she goes back in. She goes, wait a minute. He's talking like the Novus Ordo priest that were speaking to her last year, because she's in the conservative Novus Ordo. Full habit, traditional rule, lacerate themselves every day, sing in Latin. They just have the new Mass. So, there's a lot of those one is in a very conservative Novus Ordo order, right? So she was very familiar with that conservative Novus Ordo speak. And she was hearing Father Schmidberger talk exactly like the priest that she was hearing all the time in her convent. And not like Archbishop Lefebvre. And she said, what's going on here? What's happened? This is not right. This isn't the same. She had never been she didn't know the society. She only knew from the tapes of Archbishop Lefebvre and what the outside world says about the society. But she goes in and she finds something different. And then she talked about the deal with Rome. It's bad. Can't have a deal with Rome. You can't go with Rome. It's going to be a compromise. And Father Schmidberger wasn't really happy about that. So they said she was crazy. She's nuts. So you see that there's a new theology, and the retreats are being used to push this new spirit. See? So it's dangerous.
So they're not doing Ignatian?
Excuse me?
They're not following the Ignatian strictly?
No, they should be what they're going to do that is in the catechism classes. There's opportunities for catechisms in the Ignatian retreat, and in those catechisms there's a certain amount of leeway. And then, of course, the general spirit. The general spirit. How you speak is different now. Listen to the new priests. See how they speak? They'll talk about the same subject that the old priests will talk about, but it comes out different. You're noticing that.
They come right to where they want to, where normally they would have said, get rid of that thing that you're still holding on to. They'd say, get rid of the TV, get rid of the bad music, get rid of your bad clothes. They're not saying that. They come right to the edge, right ready to explode, and they don't say it.
That's right.
Stop.
Yeah, that's true. They do that all the time. Yep, that's true. But yes.
So the academy for the younger children, they're going to start becoming indoctrination centers too.
They are doing it. This year in Kansas, in St. Mary's, Kansas, the sisters will no longer be teaching catechism to the juniors and seniors, because they don't know their catechism well enough. The sisters have a class, and I would fail it, but they have a class in St. Mary's apparently where they talk about the 50 errors of Vatican II. I don't know what they are. I know a couple of them, but I don't know 50 of them. But you have to memorize in order to get out of their class the 50 errors. It's the sisters. If you get 49, you get an F, right? So you have to get the 50 classes, the 50 errors of Vatican II. Well, they're not going to be teaching that class anymore next year. So Father Beck has announced the sisters will no longer be teaching catechism to the juniors and seniors in St. Mary's, Kansas. Whether they implement it or not, now is the time, I guess, to find out. But that was the announcement made a few months ago. And they put in the catechism of the crisis as part of the curriculum, so they can re-educate about the crisis. Two guys trying to do the seminary visited the seminary in June in Winona, and they were discussing two things that they learned in the classes. One of them was, what's the other one? One was subsistit N, and the other one was they were studying what was the other one? One was subsistit N. Can't remember the other one now. Subsistit N. You know that in Vatican II, it says that the Catholic Church subsistit N, subsists in the true church, which is wrong, false. But the professor was saying last year in Winona, it's not false. It's true, actually. If you take it in the right sense, it's true. And that is completely false. And what they mean by that is, if you say the Catholic Church is the only church that subsists in the true church, then it's fine, so long as there's no other church that subsists in it. That's incorrect. If you say you subsist in this room, you're not equal to this room. You just live in it, you subsist in it. The Catholic Church does not subsist inside the true church. The Catholic Church is identical to the true church. It is true church. And non-Catholic equals non-true. Catholic equals true. You can never separate those two realities because it's one and the same identical reality. They're not two realities. The Catholic Church is true church. But the new teaching is the Catholic Church subsists inside the true church, but as long as you say no other church also subsists inside of it, it's okay. But it's a dangerous statement. It's a new teaching. It's not a heretical statement. It's not an erroneous statement. It's a dangerous statement. Notice the speech of the priests today. They will tell you there are negative things in the council. There are dangerous things that can be misunderstood. That's not correct. They're heretical things that, understood correctly, are erroneous. Yes.
Father, we had a society priest over for dinner one evening, and he told us that we need to accept the good that's in Vatican II.
Yeah, I keep hearing that. Yeah, several priests are saying that. You need to accept the good that's in the council. You know, one of the priests, Father Chazelle, and I met, when we were there in Post Falls. You can't throw out the whole council. You got to keep it in context. There are many good elements. Some people will say the whole thing was bad. You got to be careful. Well, once you do that, you're dead. The whole thing has to be thrown out because it's poison. Just like a whole cake that's poison has to be thrown out. And we know, as teachers of philosophy and studiers of philosophy, that no thing can be purely evil. Evil is the absence of good. So an easy example, if you have a table which has a top and 4 legs, it's a good table. If you take away 1 leg, you got a bad table. Take away 2, you got a more bad table. Take away 4 legs and the top, and what kind of table do you have? Nothing. Nothing wrong with that. It's in the Sound of Music. There's nothing wrong with nothing. Okay, whatever was it. So anyway, there's nothing wrong with nothing. In order to be an evil table, it has to have some good. For instance, a top and 3 legs, a top and 2 legs. Then it is a good, which is absent of some evil, a good, absent of some good, absent of a lot of good. Evil cannot exist by itself. So everyone knows who studies philosophy that there is no pure evil. Even Satan is not pure evil. He's a beautiful angel created by God with a beautiful mind and a beautiful will, which he has used for evil. But his very nature is not evil. Even Satan, his nature is not evil. He has corrupted that nature through his malicious will. But he himself, his nature was created by God, was not evil. We know that there is no pure evil in the world. So when somebody says, you can't throw out the whole council because it's not all evil, the guy's an idiot. He should know philosophy. Philosophy tells us that the absence of the ought good means the whole thing has to be thrown out. The other part is still good, but the whole is evil, therefore it must be thrown out. It's foolishness to speak like that. But anything else there? But yes. Okay, because let's see, what time is it? Okay, it's not too bad. I thought it was later. I thought it was later than that. But anything else we can? Okay, so we can go ahead and close then. Okay. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost. Saint Vincent Ferrer, Saint Jude, Lady of Victory, Lady of Sorrows, Lady of Christians, Saint Ignatius, and the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen.